Good morning. Call to order the November 20th, 2018 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. I see we have quite a few students in the chambers this morning, so I'd like to welcome all the students who are here. You're going to get to see a couple special things we only do once a year, and we'll be swearing in a couple of commissioners for their next term, as well as the election for chairman and vice chairman. So y'all picked a good meeting to come to, or it just could be the grades are due next week and you had to get something in, one or the other. But now it's my pleasure to invite Pastor Doug Voigt with the Pathway Church, who will come up and give us the invocation. That'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by the County Administrator Jason Brown. And we will start our meeting with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders. Would everybody please rise?
Almighty God, thank you for the privilege of coming before you as we convene this important session of the County Commissioners. What a privilege it is on this Thanksgiving week to open our hearts and minds and ask that you would guide this meeting. Thank you for the many reminders in Holy Scripture that you are with us. You never fail. Your ways are perfect, and you long to make a difference in this world, this county, our city. Thank you for your presence, your power. We thank you for the words of Scripture that remind us that if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, and he will give liberally. Oh God, thank you. Thank you that you are our peace. And I pray that you would help each participant in this special session this morning to trust you, to open their hearts and minds to you. I thank you for the giftedness, the God-given talents you've given to our commissioners and all those participating. We pray that you would be glorified, that you would help us so that we could advance the cause, the many agenda items of our county. We pray that you would help us because the challenges doubtless are great, but you are more than able to help us. And we thank you in Jesus' most holy name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've got a flyby.
Pastor, thank you very much.
Can you come to the office for me? Yes.
It is now my great pleasure to invite the Honorable David C. Morgan, Judge of the 19th Judicial Court of Florida. And Judge Morgan is going to be doing the honors of swearing in myself and Commissioner Flesher as we embark on our next term. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the gavel to the Vice Chairman, and I'm going to step down to the podium. And I'd like to invite my lovely wife, Susan, to come up and join me, please.
Mr. O'Brien, you ready to take the oath?
Yes, sir, I am.
Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Peter D. O'Brien,
I, Peter D. O'Brien,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States and of the state of Florida,
of the United States and of the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office
that I am duly qualified to hold office
under the Constitution of this state,
under the Constitution of this state,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
perform the duties of County Commissioner
perform the duties of County Commissioner
on which I am now about to enter,
on which I am now about to enter.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Well, we now have Commissioner O'Brien for another term, which is good. And we now have Commissioner Flesher going down to have his oath taken, and I will pass the gavel back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Fleischer, are you ready to take the oath?
Yes, I am, Your Honor.
Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Joseph E. Fleischer,
I, Joseph E. Flesher,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States and of the state of Florida,
of the United States and the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office
that I am duly qualified to hold office
under the Constitution of the state,
of the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
and I will and faithfully perform
the duties of County Commissioner,
the duties of County Commissioner,
on which I am now about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Joe.
Didn't know we get cookies.
One scoop each.
Judge Morgan, thank you very much for doing the honor. We greatly appreciate it, and all the things you do for the community as well. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Flesher.
I just want to take a pause and say thank you to all of our citizens as I have embarked now for the next 4 years. I want to thank my family, my bride, and I want to thank my mom, Mother Teresa. She couldn't be here today, but she's watching, so I just want to shout out. I know you see me. Mom, thank you for the support, and I love you. We did it. Let's get to work.
All right, very good. Thank you, Commissioner Flesher. At this point, next on the agenda will be the election of the Board of County Commission Chairman and the election of the Board of County Commission Vice Chairman. And at this time, I am going to pass the gavel down to the County Attorney, Dylan Reingold, and he will perform the elections.
I will now open the floor for nominations for Chair of the Board of County Commissioners.
Bob Solari.
In River County.
What took you so long?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? If none, do I hear a motion to close the floor?
Close the
moved.
nominations.
That was a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by, I believe, Commissioner Flesher. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. There was only one motion. Move forward with the vote on the name on the floor. So there was a nomination for Commissioner Solari. Do I hear a vote on on that nomination?
Aye.
Or all of them? I heard a nomination by Flesher, second by Adams. Do I hear a full vote from the board?
Yes.
Aye.
That's 5-0. And with that, we have Commissioner Solari. I want to be the first to congratulate you on being the new chair of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners.
Let that one out.
And with that, I will move on to the second item. I will now open up the floor for nominations for Vice Chair of the Board of County Commissioners.
Reingold would like to nominate Commissioner Susan Adams as Vice
Second.
Chair.
All right, that is a nomination by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. Are there any other nominations on the floor?
Move to
No.
close nominations.
Second.
That was a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher to close. Vote on the motion, please. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. With one nomination, I move forward with a vote on the vice chair, which was for Commissioner Adams to be vice chair. And with that, do I hear a call for the vote on that?
Aye.
All right. I hear a 5-0 for the nomination for Commissioner Adams to serve as vice chair of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. And with that, I also want to congratulate Commissioner Adams on being appointed to that position. And before I accidentally do anything further, I will make sure I pass the gavel to the new chair.
It is my distinct pleasure and honor to pass this gavel to Commissioner Solari, and look forward to his leadership for the next year and feel confident that he will continue the tradition I think we've had of all the chairs of running open meetings and letting the public speak and all those good things. So Commissioner Solari, the gavel is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My first words as chairman, I'd like to thank you for the past year's work. It was very well done. The citizens and the Board of County Commissioners certainly appreciate it, and if I can do as well as you, I'll be very happy. And I will take the moment to assure you that I certainly see no need for any changes in the way we operate, especially as we operate having open and transparent meetings and allowing the citizens to speak for basically as long as they want. So I think that's a good tradition, and we'll certainly continue it. With that, happy to get on with the meeting. I'll ask if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda or any emergency items. There being none, I'll be happy to get a motion.
Move to approve agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 2nd, 2018.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. We'll go on to the approval of the minutes of the, we just did that one. We'll go to information items. Does anybody want to pull any of the information items?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to comment that our water and sewer revenue refunding bonds got reaffirmed by Fitch Ratings as AAA. So I just want a big shout out to Vinnie Burke, our utilities director, and Jason Brown, who have over the years and worked very diligently to make sure that our utility district is run very strong, and that's reflected by the AAA rating. So thank you all for your hard work.
I'd be happy to second those. It's a great thing to have a AAA rating for your utility system. We will move on to the consent agenda. We've had a request to pull item B, which we'll do. Does anybody else from the board wish to pull an item? There being none, I'll ask if anybody from the public would like to pull an item from the consent agenda for discussion. There being one, I'll be happy to take a motion.
Move to approve consent as amended.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Kind of fun to be able to make motions now.
It's also fun moving at this pace.
Oh, we did it the year before.
Thank you. Well, there are no constitutional officers or governmental agency items. We'll move on to
Whoa. We had pulled,
B. Yes, okay. We'll move to item B. Yeah, I appreciate that.
thank you very much to the
We do
chair.
need a sergeant of arms.
Jason, would you?
That's fine.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Staff has requested to pull this item for some changes to the conservation easement language. We want to make sure that there's clarity on the fee ownership of that conservation easement. So staff would request that the board approve the final plat with subject to changes as approved by staff and the county attorney regarding the conservation easement language.
Any
Move to
questions?
approve 8B as amended by staff.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien. I'm going to give the second to Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Now we'll go to public items. The first one is Indian River Land Trust request to amend the comprehensive plan to redesignate plus or minus 11.59 acres from CI Commercial Industrial to M1 Medium Density Residential 1 up to 8 units per acre, and simultaneous request by Schwerin Asset Advisors LLCs to amend the comprehensive plan to redesignate plus or minus 11.44 acres from M1 Medium Density Residential 1 up to 8 units per acre to CI Commercial Industrial. Mr. Bowling, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. This is a request for a comprehensive plan amendment. There's also a rezoning request that's accompanying it that will catch up with it as this moves along. It's essentially an amendment for a swap between properties both located in the central county along US 1. This application was received by Community Development in the July window for amendments, went to the Planning and Zoning Commission in October. with a recommendation for approval, and is now before you all for a vote on whether or not to transmit the proposed amendment to the state and regional agencies for their review. If that happens, we'll get comments or no comments from those agencies in the state, and then proceed to a final public hearing, and for you all could take final action on the comprehensive plan amendment and also the rezoning requests. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the board approve the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and transmit it. Also to approve the associated rezonings, which again will catch up at the final public hearing. The Indian River County Code requires that a rezoning application accompany this comprehensive plan amendment to make sure that the zoning districts, if the comp plan amendment goes through, will conform with the new or requested designations. And again, that'll all be finalized through the process if this request moves forward. The two properties involved, first involves a property under the ownership of Indian River Land Trust up on the east side of US 1 on the south side of 79th Street. It's likely that this will be retained for conservation purposes, but it is in a commercial industrial designated area. So it's essentially a sender site with this request of its commercial industrial designation. This would be the receiver site, the Schwerin site, that's located at on the east side of US 1 in the Gifford area, on the north side of 41st Street. A little bit less acreage than the Indian River Land Trust site. The Land Trust site, again up by 79th Street, is designated CI, and the proposal is to take this property from CI to M1, medium density residential. You can kind of see in this area there's residential on the east side of US 1 as well as a commercial industrial, and so this would go to a residential designation under this proposal. The Schwerin site down on US 1 and 41st Street would go from M1 residential to commercial industrial. So that's the gist of the swap that's proposed. The existing zoning of the land trust site is limited commercial, CL, and the property, the Schwerin property on 41st Street in US 1 is zoned multifamily up to 6 units per acre. With this particular amendment, criteria were analyzed with respect to impacts on public facilities, consistency with the comp plan and the land development regulations, compatibility, and impacts or potential impacts on the environment. With respect to concurrency, all the different facilities that we look at for concurrency were analyzed, and it was determined that this was, the amendment is actually exempt from concurrency because it's a land use swap, and there's actually a slight decrease in development intensity under the proposal, but there will be a concurrency review within the individual projects, project development that happens on either site in the future. And with respect to the comp plan, this swap amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. A number of policies are noted in staff's report and on this slide. It will not increase the net amount of commercial industrial acreage in the overall plan, and actually the location of commercial industrial is an efficient sort of decision to have it down at 41st Street in US 1 rather than its existing location up by 79th Street. With respect to a comp plan amendment, there are some justification criteria for having an amendment in the first place, and swaps or reconfigurations such as proposed is one of the reasons for allowing this request to go forward, and so it meets that particular criterion. With respect to compatibility, again, the property, the land trust property up by 79th Street on the east side of US 1, whether multifamily or commercial, limited commercial, does fit in with this particular area. It's compatible with the property to the east and the properties to the south and to the north. Again, it may very well stay as conservation property, but if it were to be developed after the swap, if the swap is approved, it would be compatible. Same type of analysis was done with the Schwerin property, which actually is a portion of the overall property owned by Schwerin. Schwerin owns the property to the north and to the east as well, which would remain residential. And in fact, we do have at least a preliminary plan proposed at this point for residential development on those properties. Also, the extent of commercial that's proposed near this intersection lines up with the criteria we have for having those types of areas close to US 1 but not stretching far into residential areas. So those criteria are met. With respect to environmental impacts, staff's analysis is that the impact would be the same under the current or proposed land use designations. And again, with any individual development proposal, those will be scrutinized at that time with respect to county tree protection and other environmental regulations that we have. So in conclusion, staff found that the proposed amendment is compatible with surrounding uses. It's consistent with the comp plan. It meets the locational criteria for the designations on both properties. It promotes an efficient land use pattern, and it facilitates economic development at a site that's close to a highly developed area in the Gifford-Vero Beach Hospital area. We see no additional impacts on the environment from the change, and so staff supports the request. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the board adopt the proposed resolution that's in your backup to transmit this future land use amendment request to the state and regional agencies for their review, and also announce its intention to hold and advertise a final public hearing for adoption of the amendment and to consider adoption of the associated rezoning request. Be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowling. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman. Stan, could you go back to the two compatibility slides, please? So, I don't know, it's a year or two ago, we had kind of a controversial rezoning on the west side of US 1 for the heavy commercial use there, and I know the Hobart Landing folks had a lot of concerns, and some of the West Wabasso folks, I think, were concerned about the compatibility with the corridor plan there. I would assume the Hobart Landing folks are happy this is going from commercial to residential, or they're agreeable to it.
Right. Staff would assume the same, since we didn't hear any comments or concerns like we did with that.
They would have been notified of
Yes.
the process and all that.
That's correct.
Okay, and then on the subject property 2, in the backup, it does discuss that just to the east of the property outlined in blue is the Casa Bella subdivision. Yes. And it's my understanding, based on the backup, that they have reached an agreement with the applicant for some use restrictions that the homeowners have agreed to. And so from their point of view, that issue seems to be resolved as well.
That's correct. That's the information we've gotten from them as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions of Mr. Bowling? Well, this is a public hearing, so I'll now open the public hearing and ask if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this issue. Good morning. Name and address for the record.
Bruce Barquette, representing the applicant, Schwerin Asset Advisors, and just here to thank staff for their recommendation, and we ask you to support it. And yes, we did work with Casa Bella. Casey Feltner may be here. He was the attorney for Casa Bella. He was going to try to make it, but we worked together, and it turned out to be a great process. So if you have any questions,
Bruce, those things will be recorded prior to our final vote, is that correct?
No, afterwards. We're going to deliver them to you in escrow, and then after the final hearing, if it's approved, which we fully expect it to be, then it'll be recorded.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, please.
Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Freddie Woolfolk, 4590 57th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. I just wanted to stand in support of the work that's been done and the due diligence that have taken place with this property. Some time back, we established a rapport, a strong rapport with the county, and when property in the Gifford area are under any kind of change or whatever the case may be. And it has been a amicable relationship, and when you make sure that those items, those individuals that are in that particular area are given consideration about their concerns and needs. So I just want to say I support the staff and consider it a great move. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this issue? There being none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Flesher, a second from Commissioner Zork. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. We'll now move on to the second public hearing today, the DeVosta Homes LP request to amend Land Development Regulation, Chapter 934, to modify the time frame for I'm going to go back. Did we actually say when the next public hearing was going to be on this?
We did,
Date?
we have not set the date yet. It'll
sorry, I'd
depend on
like
when
to
we get the
announce
comments
it.
back, so we will be saying that later.
Okay, and why don't you just
We did-
announce it to the public right now?
Yeah, that we're going to have it, but we don't know the date yet.
Okay, fine. So again, on to the second item, the DeVosta Homes request to amend land development regulation to modify the time frame for exporting excess fill from large-scale development projects and extend the time frames for large-volume mining operations. Mr. Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a bit of history. The Indian River County's mining regulations were comprehensively reviewed, and we completed that review and made changes in 2008. And included in those revisions were some extra criteria related to removal of excess fill incidental to development. The timeframes for large mining operations were not changed in that 2008 review. The current maximum is a 10-year operation without coming back in for reapproval. That's not changed since the 1990s when that 10-year rule was put into effect back in the 90s. After 10 years, an applicant would simply reapply for site plan approval under the current requirements. With respect to excess fill incidental to construction, which is what DeVosta Homes is interested in, we looked at a change to the regulations that would apply to large-scale projects, 350 acres or larger. The reason for their request is that the way that excess fill is generated on a project that large is not accommodated well with our current situation, which for them allowed 2 18-month continuous windows to export excess fill. They've actually tried over the life of the project in the last few years to reduce the amount of excess fill that they're generating. They've converted what was originally proposed lakes to green areas, but they still have more excess fill that's readily visually evident when you see some of the large piles of excess fill they have on some of the portions of their site that aren't developed yet. As proposed, the regulation criteria would more evenly match the actual build-out process and pace that we see applicants of large projects have. Rather than setting up a specific continuous window, the proposal is to track development phases. Because even with large projects, we tend to see many years of development and development happening in phases, not all at once with projects at large. So the proposed amendment would allow excess fill to be exported from each phase of a project with a window not to exceed 12 months and tie it to the permitted activity for that individual phase. Now, for the large-scale mining timeframes and looking at adjustments to the timeframes for incidental to construction, staff thought it was only fair to also look at large-scale mining timeframes. That maximum of 10 years has been in place for a long time, since the 1990s, for any project generating 500,000 cubic yards of fill or more. And what we found is that, in the 90s, that was a lot of fill volume. At that time, we tended to have 40-acre parcels come in for mining permits, and the cycle of 10 years or less worked. What we've had since then are projects that generate much more than the 500,000 and take longer term operations. So due to the economies of scale, essentially we have operations now that are operating for longer periods of time. And so the proposal for ongoing mining operations is to change where we have the amount of excavation material relating to the number of years of the operation on the larger scale end to allow more years and to allow a staff level approval of those number of years for mining operations that are in compliance. When I say in compliance, I mean in compliance with our local regulations as well as their jurisdictional agency permits. And just as a reminder, our regulations require, and we've had for a number of years, an annual inspection performed by code enforcement and the stormwater division together to go out on site and to do a site inspection, check the excavation volumes and the validity of jurisdictional permits and compliance with those, as well as bonding requirements that we have for restoration and operation guarantees. So, and we do have code enforcement if we do have a mine out of compliance. We tend to have a good track record at the moment for the mines that are out there. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend that the board adopt the proposed ordinance, and that's staff's recommendation as well, that the incidental to construction and the ongoing timeframes be amended as described. Be glad to answer any questions you all might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Bowling? Commissioner O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stan, I know in the last year or so, we've gotten some complaint calls from neighbors out there about the dust blowing off the large piles of excavated fill and such. Do you anticipate that this new structure will help improve that situation, that they'll be able to move the material in smaller mountains or whatnot? Or
Right, I think it would. I think what it is likely to lead to are fewer large piles that have to be there for a long period of time. The way we have the window set up right now, really the incentive is for a developer of a large project to stockpile over a period of years a large pile and move it once. It's hard to do erosion control, and you get the heights all the way up to 25 feet, so I think it'll probably lead to, it'll be more efficient for the developer, and I think we won't see long-term piles.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Mr. Bowling? There being none, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone who wishes to comment on this. Good morning. Once again, name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bruce Barquette, Collins Brown Barquette, 756 Beachland Boulevard for the applicant. And again, this is a great example of staff recognizing a situation and correcting it. And we think this is a much more workable solution for all concerned. If you have any questions of us, please let me know.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public? Good morning. Name and address for the record.
Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting. I support the motion. I support staff's recommendation. I think this is a good idea, depending because you know, you have a big lapse of the economy from a period of time, so things extended on. So I think this is good for everybody, and it shows everybody working together. So I support it 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? There being no one else, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners.
Mr. Chair. Go ahead and move staff recommendation to adopt the proposed ordinance.
Motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Stan. We will now move on to departmental matters, community development. I guess you're still here, Stan.
I guess I am, and I haven't been kicked out yet, so I'll do this next one. This is a development review fee schedule update, and just a little bit of background. We're looking at, with these proposed changes, a variety of application types. The review fees for application types would be affected. One is a pretty long list of application types we have in planning. That includes planning, environmental, code enforcement, long-range, current development. So those types of applications are site plans, subdivisions, plan developments, temporary use permits, zoning confirmation letters, comp plan amendments, rezonings, land clearing, tree removal, wetland resource. There's a number of permits. Some of them are large projects, some of them are very small, used by just citizens, single-family homeowners, and so forth. Public works permits include right-of-way permits, and there are different varieties of those. The land development permits for horizontal construction, subdivision improvements. And then also proposed with this schedule update would be some new site construction inspection fees for the larger projects. Those would be subdivisions and major site plan projects. The major site plans tend to be commercial and multifamily projects. The current development review fees for planning and public works were last updated in 2004. Prior to that, the last update was 1990. Was here for all those, both of those. So now, I guess we're on a 14-year schedule, so it's 2018, and we're proposing updates again. The current fees are significantly less than fees charged by other counties. You have comparisons in your backup. And the staff review time and costs are not covered by the current fees, so an update is warranted. Back last year, staff presented some sort of draft calculated fees from staff. You all deferred action to ultimately directed the Development Review and Permit Process Advisory Committee to look at development review fees after looking at, before that, the kind of the process, development process. So the committee started its work in October of 2017. They first focused improving and streamlining the development review process. You all approved some recommended changes to the code, and then there's some non-code changes as well. Those processes were streamlined, and those changes put into effect in May of 2018. The committee in June actually approved the staff approach of updating the fees, and during the summer recess in July and August, staff calculated development review fees based on the streamlined process. It's been in place for a while now with positive feedback on those changes. We also came up with a policy that really came out of the committee discussion to have sort of a base fee for applications that are complete, responsive on the re-review, and have that. But then for those projects that are going to require re-reviews, for whatever reason, sometimes owners change their mind, they want to change some things, it goes through extra reviews, extra revisions and so forth, to have an additional re-review fee for that, and that more closely targets staff time to actual applications. So that's basically the way that the new fees are calculated. So the results, when we look at the base fee, it's lower than the 2017 fees we came to you all with. Also, we found, in our opinion, and I think the opinion of the committee, that the additional fee for extra re-reviews is just a logical way to assess review time costs. By policy, we've again kept some fees low or no charge. By policy, we're recommending no charge for site plan and PD pre-applications. That way somebody can know without spending money on a process if they're, you know, kind of what they could expect if they formally applied. We've kept local environmental permits the same. We want to try to incentivize compliance with our local environmental regulations, and also variances and appeals to keep those low. Those aren't high volume, but we think it's probably a good policy to keep those fees low. The proposed fee increases do, and they are increases in most cases, cover some but not all of staff time and costs, but a reasonable amount. And we did not factor in overhead costs, and we didn't with the other fee schedule updates in years past. Just to give a comparison of some of the types of applications that probably see the most. First, you can see for pre-application conferences under our existing ordinance and the proposed no charge. Brevard County charges over $2,000. St. Lucie charges $250, but they give a credit if someone decides to come back in and go through the process, and Martin County charges a bit under $600. For a major site plan, just picking 4 acres, our existing fee is $1,000. Proposed fee, $2,200 if it is a staff level review. If it has to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, there's more review costs, so that's $2,500 that's proposed. You can see for Brevard, it's much higher. St. Lucie, pretty comparable, and Martin County, a lot higher for that type of application. And also just put in here the re-review fee if there are a lot of changes to a plan, or there's not a good response or a complete response to staff comments. There could be extra charges built into the fee schedule. For a preliminary plat, you can see our existing and proposed, basically doubling for preliminary plat. And the easiest kind of comparable that we got with surrounding counties is Brevard, which is over $7,000. You can see the same type of comparison we have for a final plat.
And what's the fee for St. Lucie on preliminary plat, since it's shown blank?
Yeah, it is shown blank, and St. Lucie and Martin, they did have PDs, which were higher than what we're proposing. I don't know if they require, or they mostly get PDs. We didn't find the vanilla preliminary plat for those jurisdictions, but actually if we went into others like Osceola and so forth, those were higher than what's here. Just wanted to kind of show the surrounding counties. The Public Works proposed site construction inspection fees are new. They would apply to major site plan projects, which again are mostly commercial and multifamily, and to all subdivisions. initially, in looking at these, and there's some information we had in backup for the committee, other counties use a percent of site construction costs. A lot of those seem to be in the 1.5% of construction costs to 2.5%. Again, we're talking about construction of the site work, the horizontal work. And some of them used a tiered system. So that was what was originally proposed in the committee discussions, using a tiered system with a varying degree of percent of site construction costs. Again, these are estimated costs. Then what the proposal was a 1% project cost, and at the last committee meeting, a compromise was reached. Essentially, the percent project cost was not something that the committee preferred, and would rather go with a per lot, per unit, per acre, very easy to calculate sort of rate. It would be less than the 1%, but still cover a lot of the public works costs of being out there to oversee some of the activities for horizontal construction. And so the proposal is based on, for single-family subdivisions, based on a per lot, $100 per lot, multifamily, $75 per unit, and with commercial acreage, $1,000 per acre commercial. And with respect to impacts on development project costs, and this is out of your the staff report in the backup, we have a couple of charts in there to just kind of compare under the current fees and the proposed fees. And that's the full slate somebody would go through for a single-family subdivision, you know, starting from the pre-application conference to preliminary plat, the land development permit, the final plat. All those costs kind of rolled in together. What is it under the current fees, and what is it under the proposed fees? And again, the proposed fees include something new here, the public works inspection fees. And you can see the per lot, the per unit, and the per acre changes for the major site plan. Again, we just used a hypothetical project. It's going to vary depending on the type of project.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Ask a question for Stan. Under the first one, 36 lots on 24 acres, that's 1.5 units to the acre.
Right.
What was the assumed guidelines you used, since we don't have a 1.5?
Right. So what we did is we just used one of the last conventional projects that actually got built. We didn't use any names, but it's a good project. But it's just the way that turned out. We do see a lot. This is in an RS3 area. We tend to see between 1.5 and 2 units per acre there. RS6, we'd probably see around 3 units per acre. So we just picked a hypothetical with that.
Okay.
But the per lot is probably going to be a little bit lower, and it's going to be the same thing with the multifamily. If you get a little bit higher unit count on your acreage, the overall is actually going to go down a little bit. So these are probably lower intensity type of project hypotheticals.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So the proposed effective date is important. Staff thinks it's a good practice to have at least a 90-day effective date if you all were to adopt these, and we are recommending you adopt these this morning. We're proposing an effective date of March 1, 2019. That way, it's not a kind of a business model surprise to anybody who's on the threshold of applying now or in the next few months. We recommend a March 1, 2019 date. It's supported by staff and the Development Review Committee, and that's big. I mean, we did kind of roll up our sleeves and go through a lot of the guts of the proposed changes, and put together something that we can all support. The proposed resolution that's in the backup has the effective date, and that's the way we like to have fees approved, is by resolution. It can be changed by resolution, so this is not a public hearing, it's not an ordinance, but we do have a resolution form. So staff's recommendation is that the board adopt the proposed fees and the resolution with an effective date of March 1, 2019. And Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any questions you all might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Bowling? If there aren't any, I've got one. When we did the utilities, we talked about having the utility costs adjusted on perhaps an annual basis for inflation. And then we talked about when they might be reviewed again. So I was wondering if there was any discussion about having these fees adjusted for inflation, or whether after a few years they'd be reviewed, because I think you said in your conversation that the last time they were reviewed was 14 years ago?
Right, yes. So, without being too cynical, let me put this out there. When we updated the fees in 2004, the Board of County Commissioners and staff said, hey, 14 years is too long. You have these big jumps. And then the board at that time said, well, let's look at it every 3 or 4 years. Well, the next time that 3 or 4 years came up and we talked to commissioners, it was, we'd actually started in our recession here. And this is not the time to do it. So we can certainly talk about doing updates more often. I think 14 years is far too long. I could see like a 5-year time frame coming in and doing that. I don't believe we had discussions on a CPI, like an automatic. Some of the discussion on the committee was about, wanting to make sure we have even more time to see how the streamline process works, to see if maybe things would change for that. So there's been no recommendation to do a CPI, an automatic adjustment, or to come up with a particular amount of time. But I would say, this is my 3rd time. I don't think I'll be here in 14 years. That's too long. That's too long. It's too much of a shock. Too much.
Are you saying you want another review before you?
No. I'll find something else to do. Thanks.
Any comments on it? I'll go for Commissioner Zork first, and then.
They're in there for, I think in the Public Works schedule, if I recall. But again, we have reinspection fees on the building side, on the vertical side as well, but we're just basically looking at the horizontal here. For most of the development application types, there are some reinspections that come in, say, with temporary use or temporary suspension requests, where we literally have to go out twice as much on a project, essentially, in terms of code enforcement and some of the others. So that's built into the slight increase in temporary suspension to cover for that. But otherwise, I think the Public Works site inspection fee is the one that's going to really cover for their inspection, because they do a lot of field work on these projects.
I think it's on there. So a situation where you have a residential development that has a clubhouse, that has a handicap stripe parking area, and the blue line is outside the tolerance of that, and the line's got to be changed from blue to black and then scooted over and painted blue again, that would fall under Public Works reinspection and under their fee schedule.
That would be a reinspection on, actually, probably not. Here's what would happen on that, just because that's a real specific example, so it's good to talk about these things. So the Public Works inspection fee would be for the overall subdivision.
Okay.
And there would be probably a minor site plan, or that type of major site plan that would be for a clubhouse is probably going to fall under minor site plan. Something that small of a detail is probably not going to be hit with a Public Works inspection fee for the per unit or per square foot of the clubhouse. They're going to do most of their inspection work on the subdivision itself. That's going to be just a small site plan type of issue, and that's just part of the inspection process for that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 things. I agree, 14 years is too long, and I think at least initially with the changes and the streamlining and things we've accomplished, that maybe come back, or staff should come back with a recommendation in 3 years, whether to do a full, study again or not. And then, and if staff says, yeah, things have changed enough, or it's not working, do the full effort to do the full review. Or if things are looking good, then staff can just come back and say, hey, we're good now, we'll come back in 3 more years. So I think kind of a staff-generated yay or nay every 3 years would be good. And then secondly, I did take the time to read through all of the committee minutes that were in the backup, and I just want to say that I think everybody did a good job. There's a lot of strong opinions reflected in the minutes, and I want to appreciate the fact that the members of the committee took a lot of time and effort, and they were very engaged and involved in the committee, so I want to commend them for their commitment to doing that. At the same time, I appreciate staff's time in trying to work towards a compromise that hopefully works for all parties involved. And so I just want to, again, say thanks to the committee members and thanks to staff for working hard and bringing this to us at this point. Something that I think I can support, and look forward to moving it forward. But thank you all for your hard work and efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments at this time? I'll just take this opportunity also to build on what Commissioner O'Brien just said. I appreciate very much that what's being brought to us was unanimous, both on the committee side and then joined with the staff. I think that certainly makes our job a lot easier, and I think we all always appreciate that when a lot of the controversy is taken out, and appreciate all the work that both sides have done. It was certainly a yeoman's job, and we hope that the last couple of months go well, and we look forward to your final report. That said, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this issue. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Deb Robinson. I'm Vice President of Laurel Builders and the Chairman of the committee that worked with this. I think this is a good example of a joint venture between the private-public sector. I do think it's important, too, to recognize that we did go 14 years, but 10 years of those were a recession. So there weren't any real changes in the private sector other than to go down, or in the, hopefully not in the public sector either. But while we did agree on this, it's also important that you recognize, since you represent all of us, that this change will mean somewhere between $400 and $500 per lot increase to the general public. So everything that we change on this side is going to impact the people on the other side too. And I hope that you will consider that in every decision that you make going forward, not just on fees, because when that happens automatically in 3 years, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to match what's going on in the public. Other people's income levels don't necessarily change to meet those increases. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb.
Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Joseph Paladin, President Black Swan. I'm also Vice Chairman of that committee that we spoke of, and I support staff's recommendation. And keep in mind, besides myself as Vice Chairman and the Chairwoman who just spoke, all 11 other committee members worked on this. We just didn't unanimously agree right off. Took a lot of discussion and work with staff, and so a lot of thought went into this. So we support staff's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? There being none. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation to adopt the new fee schedule.
And does that include your recommendation of a somewhat staff review after 3 years?
Yes, sir. That would include the 3-year review.
Thank you very much. We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stan.
Commissioner Fleischer.
We now move on to consideration of Gifford Neighborhood Plan Annual Report Card for 2018. Good morning again.
Good morning again, yes. So this is our 5th report card for the Gifford Neighborhood Plan. You may recall back in 2013, the board directed staff to update the Gifford Neighborhood Plan, went through a long process with a lot of public input, a lot of community input, and a lot of community support for the plan that was adopted in 2014. And one of the key elements in the plan is not to have the plan, sit on the shelf. There are a lot of action elements in there performed by a number of departments, especially Public Works. The plan contains a number of objectives that deal with a lot of different issues, communication being one. In fact, Mr. Woolfolk, I think, really kind of referenced that earlier item, housing, economic development, and actual improvements, streets, sidewalks, parks, beautification project. Those are now not only part of the plan, but we've integrated them over time with our own capital improvement element and so forth. With respect to the report card itself, here in basically year 5, 29 actions had due dates from 2014 to 2018. 26 have been completed. That's just round up. It's 90%. 3 are in progress, which I'll go over in just a moment, and 42 ongoing actions have all continued to be completed. Actions in progress, we just wanted to highlight one I know that you all have looked at and are very much aware of, and that's sidewalk improvement along 45th Street. We've had to put on hold one of those dealing with the all aboard Florida Bright Line proposed improvements, and of course the community is aware of that as well. And also sidewalk further to the west, west of 43rd Avenue. We actually have a 2021 date, but that particular project is moving forward, and we hope to actually have that completed before the 2021 completion date. Another action that's in progress deals with identifying any safety items along canals that are controlled by Indian River Farms Water Control District. You know, one of the beautification projects, and actually that we've expanded since the plan was adopted in 2014, is really to culvert the south side of 45th Street east of 43rd Avenue, but there may be other areas as well. And Public Works just needs more time in coordinating with Indian River Farms on identifying appropriate safety barriers, so we're asking that that be changed to 2019. Another action in progress deals with the Phase 2 beautification project scope and the time frame. The scope has been expanded, as I just mentioned, on culverting, and you all have taken actions. In fact, last week you took an action to on a rebid, which saved money to go forward with that project. Delay is not deny and all that, so right now we're looking at a completion date in 2019 to actually reflect the rebid and construction time frame. Also, just wanted to let you all know that, you know, part of the process really of each report card is for staff to coordinate with the Progressive Civic League, which we've been doing all these years. And actually, we've kind of changed this a little bit. We're kind of giving them a progress report following the school analogy. So we tend to try to get them some information in the summer so we can talk and discuss on some things. So I think that's been an improvement over the last couple of years. Staff's recommendation is that the board review and accept the implementation report card, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff? There be none, I have a couple comments. First, I'd like to thank you, and this is one of those things, again, staff and other members of the community, I think, are making us look good, but it is all your work, so I'd like to thank our staff. I'd like to thank leaders in the Gifford community, Freddie Wolfick, who's here today, Joe Idolette, Tony Brown, Teddy Floyd. They do incredibly important work, not just interacting with staff, but even more importantly, I believe, interacting with their community. And I think that is one of the things that has made this process and generally our relations with the Gifford community what I think are very positive lately. So I thank that. I'd also like to thank our county administrator, because his work in this is, again, it's behind the scenes. I don't know if it's very well appreciated, but it is certainly necessary. And the Gifford residents themselves. I mean, this is a community effort, and it's very important to have community involvement. So I thank all involved. With that, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this issue. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Freddie Wolfolk, 4590 57th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. I too want to echo that same sentiment about the relationship that we have with the county commissioners, with the county staff. It was established some time ago when we had Commissioner Gary Wheeler made a comment that he wanted to make sure that the Gifford residents receive the same treatment, even though they're not a municipality, but receive the same treatment as far as gathering information, hearing about what's happening in their community, and that has been a remarkable tool. We have open door policy with the county, same with us when we come and talk to Stan and the other staff, Sasan and numerous others. But I just want to say today that that Gifford Neighborhood Plan is a report card tool. It helps us to monitor changing things that may seem to be denied, but not denied, just delayed. But I like the part about the county when they see something down the pike that seems to be coming that's going to alter something we thought we were going to be able to do at a particular time frame, then they come to us before it happens and say, listen, that intersection there on 45th and Old Dixie where we wanted to do some railroad crossing widening due to All Aboard Florida, why should we do that improvement and then have it torn up to lose taxpayer money? And I like the way the county officials look out for the taxpayer dollars, making sure they are spent wisely. So my hat's off to Stan and the rest of the crew. I do ask that with the connectivity of the sidewalks, sidewalks are fantastic, but they have to go somewhere. So when a new subdivision come in and leave a particular gap in the sidewalk continuing, that's that pose a liability to them. So we're asking that before you do the sidewalk connectivity, that we take a look at some of the sidewalk that exists right now. They have some broken or uplifted surfaces that may cause some type of tripping or accident. So we will agree with the plan and the report card that is being presented today, and continue to ask that we keep a lot of communication. Communication is key. It is proven to be a great factor in our relationship. We thank you so much. So, Mr. Adler said he could not be here today, but he asked me to please say thank you to the commissioners and staff for what has transpired. We may not have a room for the people from Gifford, as I said earlier in some presentation. Doesn't mean they didn't care. They mean they have to work. So I just appreciate being one of the persons who can come and gather information to go back to share with them to say this is what is happening in your community. Thank you so much.
And thank you. Anybody else from the public? Commissioners? Commissioner Zork.
Yes, wonder if I could ask the Public Works Director a question on working with the Indian River Farms protocol on safety as it relates to canals. And I know we have some issues we should look at in the Gifford area, but once, whatever the protocol is you come up with to decide is something a safety issue or not, if that could then be looked at for other applications. I know on 16th Street, 8th Street, somewhat on 4th Street, where you have edge of pavement within 10 to 15 feet of the edge of the canal. You have, we all get calls on these, why don't you pipe all the canals? Well, you can't because it's outrageously expensive. But there may be some areas that need some attention, but maybe this will come up with a good protocol that we could then possibly apply to other locations. Your comments or thoughts?
Rich Berget, Public Works Director. There are standards that we can apply. However, we have to look at the overall operation of the canal cleaning. If that impedes the farm's main operation, then as long as the canal is protected in some way, shape, or form, back in the days it was put in, as long as we're not changing anything, we have to adhere to that. Now, that said, we try to work with the farms, and the farms works with us if we need a guardrail, something that's significant. But to apply today's standards to the canals as they are today, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to pipe everything, and we just can't afford that. So we take safety seriously, and we work with the farms as best we can to allow them to do maintenance and for us to install safety features as we can.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Wonderful.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? There being none, be happy to have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead and make a motion to accept the Gifford Neighborhood Plan 2018 Implementation Report Card.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien. This time we'll give the second to Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Move on to request to review proposed impact fee update scope of services. Authorize staff to initiate the consultant selection process for the impact fee update and formally initiate the impact fee ordinance revision. Didn't we just do this? It seems like just yesterday we did this. I guess, sometimes.
Sooner than 14 years, yes. We have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a proposal. Actually, we did get the direction from the board to come back after 5 years instead of after 3 years on this, and here we are. Just a bit of background. Traffic impact fees were adopted in 1986. They were updated at least one time after that. And then in 2005, there was a major impact fee update. And not only were traffic impact fees updated, but at that time, 8 other non-traffic impact fee categories were adopted, and fees were adopted for those: correctional facilities, solid waste, public education, schools, libraries, fire, law enforcement, public buildings, and parks. And those were established. The code for impact fees requires that the schedule be reviewed at least once every 3rd year. The impact fee schedules were updated in 2009 and 2014, and were more recently reviewed by the board in 2017, last year, and the board decided not to update the impact fee schedules at that point, but to wait until 2019 and use a 5-year update time frame. So in order to get it done in 2019, we're coming before you all now. Just a bit of history, the 2014 impact fee update had a major change in it in that we have now the affordable growth model used in the evaluation of impact fees. That allows kind of some revenue policy decisions, and the board took the initiative to incorporate some of those policy decisions to drop impact fees for commercial projects, for economic development reasons, and pretty much kept the residential fees flat. That can be done with slow growth or moderate growth environments, especially. And so that was a major change in 2014. We also discontinued collection of correction facilities, solid waste facility, and library facility impact fees, but kept those categories in the impact fee ordinance so that they could be reactivated by the board in the future if the board ever decides that that's something they would want to do. Again, as in the past, consultant expertise is needed to do the update, and so that's the proposal before you all today to authorize an update, to approve the scope of services for consultant selection, and to move forward with the update effort. What's proposed is, and actually this is the same that we did in 2017 when we came to you, a reduced scale of the 2014 effort, not performing an evaluation of the suspended facilities, but to keep those suspended. We don't need to revisit level of service standards. That was comprehensively redone in 2014. And there are also certain fee variables such as trip length and trip generation rates that haven't changed, so we don't see a need to have the consultant work on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could you back up one, Stan?
Sure.
Where you have does not include review of certain fee variables, trip length, and trip generation rates.
Right.
Do you think with the changes in transportation models, vehicles, go line, either if a site was to come in to have a designated go line stop on their project or building or whatever it happens to be, would that be a reason to look for a discounting factor if they're trying to integrate what they're doing with public transportation, which takes trips off the road, which would then affect trip length and trip generation?
Right. Yeah, good question. Transportation is changing. It's not changing that quickly. It's not changing that quickly in our case. When you look at the amount of trips that, even as good a system as we have for transit, we're not taking off more than 1% of the total trips on the network with that. So even if you have an individual business that maybe they try to, and they should, this is great, to accommodate clientele that come and use that, when you look at the impacts on the overall system, it's still not going to drop it much. So, and again, we have always taken and will continue to take, I think, a conservative approach on our impact fees to make sure there's no way that we're going to overcharge anybody. So we tend to have a bit of a cushion, probably 10 to 15% cushion that might make up for that. But there may be other ways to incentivize that, and it would just be good business to do that, to accommodate transit
All right,
riders.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, order.
Commissioner Bryan.
Staying on the, not changing the status of collecting for the solid waste facility impact fees. That doesn't preclude us from, in a year or two, looking back at whether we want to implement that, because there's a lot of things going on with the landfill now, and the biosolid stuff, and the new ownership at the INEOS facility, and a lot of different things are kind of going on there. So the fact we're not going to look at it now doesn't preclude us from doing it, say, 2 years from now if something major changes.
That's correct, and you bring up a good point. You could actually, this is an update of the entire schedule, and this would continue to be suspended the way it's proposed now. But in 2 years, you could take one component like solid waste if something changes drastically enough, and just have somebody evaluate just that component, and you could certainly do that. And it's still in the ordinance, so you could just reactivate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Stan at this time? Stan, if I have,
Sure.
I'll wait to the end of your presentation.
Okay, all right. So a couple of items that are new in here that we're asking to be updated. The local growth rate, that's an important part of the affordable growth model. And even though we've certainly seen an uptick in the growth rate with this business cycle, we try to look at a longer term growth rate, but still that's a very important component to look at. We also need to update the revenues and credit projections now that the local sales tax has been extended. It was extended in 2016 after the the model that we used in 2014. Construction costs have definitely gone up, as have right-of-way costs, so that will need to be factored in. But we also, again, want the growth model, the affordable growth model, evaluated to look at and to give the board revenue policy options and how they want to apply fee categories and fee rates. And something new that we didn't have in the 2017 scope that we brought to you all last year, but we want to add, and is proposed to be added in the scope now, is to have the consultant evaluate the 3 separate traffic impact fee benefit districts that we have, to at least have the technical evaluation available if the board wants to go with fewer districts, which we think has some real benefits. Instead of the 3 districts that we have now for traffic impact fees and spending monies, we do have some projects that really extend and benefit people. We have, people in the central and north county and even the south county that really benefit. We have a lot of back and forth between North and South County. We're seeing that more and more, so it might make sense to have, for instance, 2 districts rather than 3. So with this evaluation, adding that in will give you all a technical basis and give you the ability to make a policy decision on that if you want. So we have that in the scope of services as well. Like last time, there's also in the proposed scope, consultant attending public hearings and meetings. We certainly foresee having a public workshop after a draft report is done to get a lot of public input, get direction from you all after seeing kind of the first cut at the evaluation, and then going from there with public hearing for adoption. So that's all built into the scope. Time frame, if it's approved today, we could see a time frame of essentially getting someone under contract by February, and then we anticipate it'd take 6 to 9 months for final adoption, and that, of course, would include workshop and public input during that time frame. Also, what we're asking for is direction from you all on your direction to us from last year, which was to put it in the code more specifically to do an update on a 5-year time frame rather than simply review after 3 years. We think that that's a good idea, and it's also consistent with the state enabling legislation that's in place now. You have to have good and recent enough data, so we think that a 5-year time frame to actually do the update is good to put in our code. So it's a minor change in terms of the text and the wording. We've got an initial draft in your backup, and if you have any comments on that, we'd be glad to take them now. If you authorize us to initiate a formal change, it would just be a public hearing before you all. We could get that underway anytime you all want. So staff's recommendation is twofold. One, that you review and approve the scope of services to have the impact fee update conducted in 2019. And then second, that you give us any comments and authorization to move forward with a change to the ordinance to require an update every 5 years. Be glad to answer any questions you all might have.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make 2 comments. One, and it's more questions for the board. The last time we did the impact fee study, we used the affordable growth model, which I took to be a conservative way of looking at impact fees, which I thought kept impact fees on the low side. And for me, I think that's appropriate, and I think I'd like to see us continue having impact fees on the low side. So I would want to get the comments from my fellow board members. And I think the 5-year time frame is fine, so I'd like to also get the comments from my fellow board members on that. I think it's important for the staff to understand where we are, particularly on the first issue, before they go ahead to a lot of work and effort.
Mr. Chairman, I went along and voted for the affordable growth model when we first came to it. But I think it's good we need to relook at it, because I think we need to balance how much pressure we're putting on the sales tax, optional sales tax. I think this is a good time to take a look at it, because we have had a pickup in our growth right now. And Stan, correct me if I'm wrong, but pre-boom, we were in the 900 to 1,000 single-family permits per year. During the boom, we're 12, 13, 1,400. Obviously, we dropped on that in the recession, but now we're getting back up to where we're either at the top or exceeding our long-term growth rate. Is that correct?
That's correct. Except actually, the boom was even more pronounced. It was almost 3,000 on an annual basis at the peak, right between 05 and 06. Remarkable, we were recovering from back-to-back hurricanes and had a building boom all at the same time, but that's what happened. And but you're correct. We're back probably a little bit above our pre-boom trend line right now, kind of on the high side of that trend line. It's interesting, if you look at the affordable growth model was 1.4% annual growth, and if you look at 14, 15, 16, we were just under that, but now we're over it every year after that. Right now, we're probably just a tiny bit above 2% annual growth rate, which is about right for Indian River County is kind of a moderate growth county as opposed to a really rapid growth county, and that's probably about our long term.
And then when they update this, they will look at the fact that we've committed 20% of that optional sales tax to lagoon-related projects as well, right? They'll factor that
Sure,
in?
yes, all that will be factored in, and that's for if I remember right, the first 5 years of the optional sales tax. Yeah, yes, that can all be calculated and factored in.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we should continue to look at that affordable growth model. I'm very glad we're going to be looking at it now because I think the conditions are really good with the increase in growth and our commitment on the sales tax to take a good hard look at it and see if it's doing what we initially thought it was going to do. So I'll be very much in favor of moving this forward. So,
Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Zorc?
Yes, Stan, what is either Dr. Nicholas or somebody's put out there, if your growth rate is less than X%, growth pays for itself? Do you know what that stated number is?
I don't, and Dr. Nicholas is
The
a very
guru.
smart guy, but I would not, numbers take on a life of their own, and I think we probably put too much weight in something like that, but yeah, there's actually, from the 70s on, there's been certain numbers for fiscal, what makes it something, a development or a house price fiscally, where's the break-even point. And I don't recall this latest one, but it doesn't surprise me somebody has a number out there.
Where I think it's part of a court case.
I'd be interested in seeing that, actually. I haven't.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Fleischer?
Mr. Chairman, of course, fully support staff's recommendation and thought process. We've worked over the years to keep impact fees conservative, doable, and working with development to be as fair as a impact on our existing citizens, but keeping that balance in a comfortable fashion. We may not have accomplished all of those goals, but we have worked hard, and I'd like to see the conservative approach maintained.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this issue? Morning, name and address for the record, please.
Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting. I have a few comments and a suggestion. One comment as far as regarding the impact fees. I think we need to look at our LDRs, and we need to look at our comp plan, and we need to look into making a change that we talked about 10 or 12 years ago when we had the impact fee workshop. We're going to be looking in the future of parks and recreation. This is besides traffic. And I think that we have to change our LDR, Chapter 1005 to be exact, paragraph 4E says the only consumption-based impact shall be, not as an example or maybe, shall be building a bridge from the mainland to Orchid Island. I think in building parks and things in the future, we're going to have to look into having a consumption-based impact so we can use impact fees from different districts to build a park or recreation or something in another area. So I think we need to look at that LDR and our comp plan in the future. That's one recommendation. Secondly, going back to traffic impact, the level of service on our roads, going back to all aboard Florida. They're going to pay for the crossroads and the railroad crossings and all that stuff, but nobody's considered the fact that 16 trains to 32 trains a day coming across our roads is going to lower my level of service. So me as a developer, or other developers, may have to compensate for that going forward. Now, I know we can't do anything about that, but we have to take that into consideration the next time they come up here and tell us that they're paying for everything. They're not paying for everything. Thirdly, traffic impact fees. In southern Florida, in some of the bigger counties, Broward, Dade, like that, their traffic impact fees are actually less than ours because they can't widen roads anymore. They have to use their traffic impact fees to pay for community transportation, things like that, which is less money. So in the future, I think that's going to be the way we're going to have to look at, once we widen all the roads we can, once we've improved all the intersections we can, which is very costly, millions and millions of dollars. We're going to have to look into community transportation. That's my impact.
I just have one comment on you. I'm not sure that you hit it quite right on the impact fee on the southern communities. I've always thought that our impact fees would have to be higher because of our density. When you talk about an area that has 20 or 30 or 40 units on an acre, and you have to build roads versus a community that has 2 units per acre, and you have to build roads that go the same distance, I don't see the flow of funds coming in our community. So I think that would be one reason which would speak to a higher impact fee for us as opposed to.
I agree with you, but I don't see us changing any of our zoning so we ever have 20 or 30 units an acre. So looking into the future, based on the way we plan our future here, I think I made the recognition that we're going to be looking at public transportation in the future once we give up on we can only widen roads so much, 6 lanes, 8 lanes, 12 lanes. So that's why they're lower in southern Florida, besides the fact that you brought up. I mean, even like in Palm Bay, they got an intersection in Palm Bay that's zoned RM20. We're not going to ever have that here. That's not what we do. So I'm just making a point.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Morning again. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, Deb Robinson, Laurel Builders. I just want to make a couple comments, and the first one is, if you approve the language in this with the update every 5 years, I'll guarantee you're going to have increases every 5 years, because it's going to be a fait accompli. Our country evolved over 400 years. Cities grew, counties grew, schools, roads, hospitals, ambulance, and we never had impact fees until the 80s. So the impact fee, let's not fool ourselves, impact fees are a palatable income stream to subsidize taxes so that we don't have to raise them. It's more palatable to the general public, and it's much easier for government to do it. But the end result is you're creating an environment where people can't afford houses. It's over $10,000 for a house in impact fees. It's crazy. I don't know how our whole country grew without these impact fees, but they just came in the mid to the late 80s. And when they first came in, it was only going to be this, and it was just going to be this little amount, and everybody bought in. And slowly over the years, it's added and added and added and added till it's insane. So the the result that you have is you make home ownership a reach for people. It's a return to pre-World War II where all you could afford was to rent. You're putting housing further and further beyond reach for the average citizen. And not everybody lives on the island. A huge percentage of our community lives in a lower priced home. And that's, almost a roof. So I strongly suggest that you look very closely at when you impose an impact fee and look at what the end result is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
$184, Deb, is what they started at.
It was 183.
183,
It was
okay.
183. That was the first impact fee. That was the roads in 1986-ish.
Right.
That was the only one.
Let me abuse my privilege and get up here a second time real quick on something Commissioner Zork said earlier about new growth paying for itself, and as far as impact fees. We can make new development pay for itself, and impact fees is a major part of that. There's a difference between new development paying for itself and growth paying for itself. Growth will never pay for itself. We can't afford for growth to pay for itself, so it's two different subjects. Impact fees will never compensate growth paying for itself.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to comment, it's not just the impact fees that raise the cost of a home. I'm not even sure if you were on the board. I know Commissioner Flesher was, but we modified one of our land development regulations to allow smaller lots and reduce setbacks. A couple subdivisions, Falcon Trace and Millstone Landing, with the goal that with a smaller lot, there would be smaller homes built and they would be more affordable. And the home builders came in, and instead of building smaller homes, they went to 2 stories and built 2,800 to 3,200 square foot homes that they charged $350,000 to $450,000 for. So, you know, I find it a little disingenuous to blame the impact fees for making housing unaffordable when it's the builders are coming in and they're going to build what the market's going to give them. And so they're targeting that market that can afford that home, and then they complain to us that, you know, we're not allowing affordable housing. So I just want to make it clear that in my mind, we tried to come up with a scenario where there would be smaller homes that would be affordable, and the builders just went and built giant homes anyway. So, you know, the cost is what it is, but that's what they're building for the market that's out there, so.
Understood. I'll just mention that, give Stan a heads up. I think that's something we may have to look at during the course of the next year, is more affordable homes. I don't, almost have a little bit afraid to open up that Pandora's box, because I haven't seen many in the way of good solutions out there. And, you know, what you just said with the Falcon Trace is part of that, but I think it's something that we're gonna have to, well, I think it is something that it would be good for Indian River County to look at before it becomes a huge problem, like it is in some communities, say San Francisco or something like that. So that's just a heads up, Stan. I'll try not to make it too bad when it comes. I'm going to go to Commissioner Adams first, if you, I might, Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, I would agree with the conversation surrounding affordable housing. I think we always need to be cognizant of the fact that every decision we make that adds to the price does, in the end, add to that cost to the homeowner. Now, obviously, builders make decisions, and the market is what it is, but I would love to have a conversation about affordable housing. I think it is a big concern in this community, those starter homes from people that are looking to move out of apartments and start becoming homeowners. It's just not out there for the average wage that's supported in our community. So I think anything we can do to encourage that, and I would love to have that conversation. Obviously not today, but moving forward.
And it's not builders or us. I mean, the fact is, if a builder does a $300,000 home, he can make a profit that he can live on, so it makes sense. So again, it's a very dynamic and complex issue. Good morning. I thought you said you weren't going to abuse the privilege?
Well, if you'll let me, I'll do it, you know.
Oh, absolutely, because we invite
On affordable housing, back
You know,
when,
the old chairman would have shut him down by now, I'm just saying that.
Well, you know, the new chairman's still trying to get his legs.
I appreciate the respect, Mr. Chairman. Anyway, under affordable housing, a couple things we did when I was chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee addressing affordable housing. Number one, we passed the recommendation that small lot subdivisions should be preserved for affordable housing. Number two, like in a development that I was a part of, like Travasso, when we got approval for our project, as a deed restriction, we made a certain percentage of houses had to be priced for affordable housing, either very low or medium income. So as a deed restriction, that still applies. That's still in place today. So when somebody comes in here as a builder, which I am, and we try and get 6 units an acre or whatever we try to get, part of that approval might be that we set aside 2 units per acre to be affordable housing. See, this does two things in general. If you just set up whole neighborhoods as affordable housing, if you're not careful, sooner or later you set up a lower class neighborhood. But if you build affordable housing into a neighborhood, so it's all comparatively the same, now you accomplish something. You bring everybody together, you upgrade everybody's level standard of living, and plus you provide affordable pricing for people to buy houses. That's my comment.
Stan, my apologies of getting us off topic. I'll ask if there's any more comments on the issue under discussion. There being none, commissioners?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have a whole year of motions to make up for, so I'll go ahead and move that we approve staff recommendation to initiate the consultant selection process and to authorize the formal ordinance amendment.
Second. We've got the motion from Commissioner O'Brien, the second from Commissioner Flesher. Any other comments or discussions? Stan, do you feel you've got enough guidance?
I do, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. And I've got the motion that this would be a great time to take a break. So we will break until 10:40. Time to reconvene the meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We will move on to Utility Services. We've got a request to sole source brand purchase of 2 pumps for Spoonville Marsh. Good morning, Mr. Burke.
Good morning. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We are asking for board approval to purchase 2 replacement pumps for Spoonville Marsh. You'll note that we did go out for bid, worked with the purchasing department in August of 2017. At that time, Barney's Pump out of Lakeland, Florida was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and we did purchase a pump for just under $50,000. However, times have changed, material prices have escalated, there's been some tariffs put onto the marketplace, and we are now going to a all stainless steel construction on the shaft and the bowl, so that the price per pump is just under $55,000, which is why we've had an increase from previous. So the funds are available in the Spoonville Marsh Machinery and Equipment account. It's under the 292 that we allocate to make sure that we can look at the cost per pound removed as part of our operating costs. Operating fund revenues are derived from our water and sewer sales. So staff is recommending that Indian River County Department of Utility Services request the Board of County Commissioners to declare National Pump Company for model H14MC pump as a sole brand for the Spoonville Marsh facility, waive the requirements for bids, and authorize the purchasing manager to issue a purchase order to Barney's Pump for 2 pumps in the total amount of $109,590. And I'm certainly available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Questions for Mr. Burke? Commissioner Zork.
Yes. When you mentioned that you did kind of look around before you decided for the sole source, we do have one of the world's largest pump manufacturers here, MWI, based partially in Indian River County. Did they have anything that was worth exploring?
We go through our demand star. I'm not sure if MWI is tied into the demand star, but we worked with purchasing to put that out on the street and solicit.
Okay.
I'd have to get with purchasing to see if MWI was, I don't think they were one of the 3 respondents that did submit, but we do business with MWI off Oslo for other projects, but I'm not sure if they had this specific type of application, 1, because of the corrosive nature, and 2, because of the specific application to tie into the existing structure that we had.
Okay, good. Just always good to check with our local manufacturers that are in a related industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Vinny, I think the taxpayer will be well served with the plan to go completely with stainless steel. That deterioration, the salt has got to take its toll on the impellers.
It's a pretty harsh environment, yep.
With that, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
We've got a motion to approve staff recommendation. Do we have a second from Commissioner O'Brien? Do we have any comments from the public? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? There being none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Mr. Burke, Asset Management Program Services.
Thank you. If you recall, back in 2017, the board approved the asset management plan services with Arcadis. This firm was selected after a competitive process in which they are going to provide asset management services for the utility. There's specific tasks that were outlined in the initial scope of work services. However, due to the ending of fiscal year 17-18, there were some dollars left on the table, approximately $90,000 due to unfinished business. So the request today is to finish task 7, to complete the pilot assessment, condition risk assessment, and also, as we noted when we did a gap assessment on our SIMS program, our computerized maintenance program, there were some deficiencies with respect to the table structure and the way that that database had been set up. So this is a twofold process to, one, finish the unfinished work of task 7, but also to update and solidify the SIMS program so that we can make sure that we continue to do some of the risk and the condition assessment of the assets in place. So we do have funding in the amount of $400,000 in this year's budget, which was anticipated for the second phase of the asset management program. Funding is available in the other professional services account in the operating fund. Operating funds are derived from water and sewer sales, and staff would recommend that approval of the revised scope of services as outlined in Exhibit 1A of the attached agenda item, authorizing the above-mentioned professional services, and request the Board of County Commissioners accept the amended scope of services for a lump sum amount not to exceed $121,500 to Arcadis US Incorporated. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any questions for Mr. Burke?
Mr. Chairman, I'm very excited that we're moving forward with this whole asset management plan. I think it's kind of long overdue, and it will give Vinny the tools he needs to make sure that our utility district, as we grow, continues to be more proactive than reactive. And I think this is a great step in that direction. And I would just kind of give the board a little bit of a heads up. I think at some point, Vinny's going to need some additional support people to help manage this database and the data that they'll be generating. So just kind of a heads up down the road. But with that, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation.
Motion for Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Anybody from the audience want to speak on this motion? There being none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Burke. We now move on to county attorney matters. Approval of license agreement between Lutgert Vero LLC and Indian River County for construction of a dune crossover at the tracking station park. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. Good morning. In June of 2017, Lutgert Vero LLC purchased a 5.4-acre piece of property on the east side of A1A from the town of Indian River Shores. The property is adjacent to the county's tracking station park. As the town was preparing to sell the property, the town had approached the county about access to the beach through the park. On April 4, 2017, the board voted to allow one dune crossover subject to a non-exclusive license agreement with the county. At the time, the board had made it clear that it did not support trimming of sea grape trees within the park other than that necessary to access the dune crossover. Lutgert is now seeking to enter into a license agreement which will allow Lutgert to design, permit, and construct a dune crossover on the park property. Under the license agreement, Lutgert will be responsible for maintenance on the park property for that dune crossover directly adjacent to and abutting the dune crossover and the path to the dune crossover. Under the direct supervision of the county environmental manager, Lutgert may remove exotic vegetation or exotic plant species and replace them with native plant species with the pre-approval by the county in writing. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board approve the license agreement and authorize the chair to execute that agreement. With that, I turn it back over to the chair for any comments.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the county administrator if he sees any issues with this in terms of the item. I'm looking for issues, just want to check with you.
I don't see any issues as long as we make sure that any of the trimming, as the county attorney referred to, would be under the direct supervision of the county and pre-approved by the county. Want to make sure it's very clear that the board's direction is that any of the trimming would be limited to that which is required for construction of the dune crossover. Other than that, we see no issues.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Commissioner Fleischer?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to look at the trimming of the invasive species as warranted is traditionally done by hand and not by large mechanized equipment, which would probably increase the odds of an accidental trimming. Is that
point well taken? Well,
clear?
Sure.
We've seen some rather large oaks just fall due to accidents in that.
Yeah, I can say that in the contract, it's under the direct supervision of a county environmental manager. They may remove selected exotic plant species, and so long as the removal is pre-approved by the county in writing and confirmed in a field meeting conducted prior to any removal.
I think the applicant is getting the message, and just so they understand why we mentioned this, it seems peculiar, but neighbors, when they come across some trimming, get really excited. So we hear very quickly and often from something like this.
Yes.
And it's certainly nothing that we'd like to have to address. So I'm looking forward to a good partnership with them, and I think they understand what our main concern is. So with that, if there are no more questions from the board, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this issue. Good morning. Thanks for staying with us today. And your name and address for the record.
Bruce Barquette, Collins Brown Barquette. Haven't had this much fun in a long time. We got your message loud and clear. We understand that the language was drafted by the county. My client is well aware of what the.
And I just want to make sure your client, no, I mean, it's not, we don't mean to be picking on your client. This is something, though, that comes back to us at a force that you wouldn't expect for.
I understand that. I'm sure you're going to hear from neighbors even with county super.
Oh, we will. We just want to be.
You know, but anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bruce, I don't think we're going to hear because you're involved.
I'm not going to be out there with the clippers myself, but I'll.
Anybody else for the public on this item? Commissioners?
Staff recommendation?
Second.
We've got the motion from Commissioner O'Brien. I'm going to give the second to Commissioner Adams if I could. Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Move on, Mr. Reingold, to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee appointment.
Thank you very much. Andrew Bauer retired from the Indian River County Habitat for Humanity and thus resigned from the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, where he had served as the not-for-profit provider of affordable housing member. His successor at Habitat, Cheryl Vidito, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, has submitted an application to fill that same position. County Attorney's Office simply recommends that the board consider the resume submitted and decide whether to appoint the applicant to fill the unexpired term and also to renew that term through January 2021. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you very much.
Move approval.
Second.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Adams, a second from Commissioner Zork. Any other comments from the commission? Anybody from the public want to speak on this item? There being none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you
Very much.
Mr. Reingold, Indian River County Committee's member reappointments.
Per Resolution 2011-72, every fall, the County Attorney's Office reaches out to those members of various committees whose terms are set to expire in January, and then to determine whether the members wish to be considered for reappointment. Then a list of those members who seek to be reappointed is presented to the board at the board's last meeting in November, which is today. We have attached to the agenda item a list of all the members of the committees who have requested to seek reappointment. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board consider the list of committee members and reappoint such members as the board deems appropriate, consistent with Resolution 2011-72. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reingold. Any questions from commissioners?
No, sir.
Your pleasure.
Staff recommendation?
We've got the motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reingold. Next up is Commissioner matters. The first is Commissioner Peter O'Brien with a request from Vero Beach Councilmember Laura Moss to change the tourist development ordinance to allow funds to be used to finance beach park facilities. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last year or so, Councilmember Moss has brought up various items and issues regarding how the local option tourist tax is allocated and spent. One of her biggest complaints, I guess, is that she would like the tourist development tax to be used to build beach facilities. In particular, the city would like to build a new lifeguard tower headquarters at Humiston Beach. State law, Florida statutes do allow tourist development tax to be used for beach park facilities, but the county ordinance 87-11 does not allow for that. At a May 15th meeting, the city council, under a different item, Councilmember Zudans asked if I would bring this forward for consideration. I told him I didn't support it, but out of respect and in the spirit of compromise, I did tell him I would place this item on the agenda for the commission to consider. Kind of where we are in this, commissioners, from my point of view, is one, the TDC has always worked to allocate the funds based on putting heads on beds. And while they do a lot for the city, they do a lot for the county, they do a lot for the other municipalities, it's always been a collaborative effort, and not singling out one area or the other, just saying, hey, we want to bring people to Indian River County, and they're going to come here and spend their dollars, and kind of the rising tide floats all boats. And that's been, in my mind, a very successful model. And so at the May 16 TDC meeting, there was under discussion 2 requests from the city of Vero Beach that were specific to the city. They were asking for funds for their centennial celebration, as well as funds for specific to the Vero Beach Airport for marketing. After some discussion by the TDC, they voted 6-1 to remove those 2 items from consideration. One of the concerns was if you start allowing individual municipalities to make specific requests, then every municipality will feel that they have the right to make specific requests. However, following the traditional cooperative spirit that the TDC has been working under in the collaborative spirit, they did vote to move some additional funds into the Indian River Chamber's budget to help with airport promoting. So, I think that model has worked well for us in the past and will continue working well for us in the future. I would just add that over the years, the county, we've had lifeguard towers and lifeguard facilities be destroyed by various hurricanes and storms and what have you. And the county, we've always used our 1-cent sales tax to replace those, and we have not asked for TDC money to replace those lifeguard towers. And so that's how the county has handled that. So with that, Commissioners, I've just placed this on the agenda for any discussion. I see that Councilmember Moss is here, and she may wish to speak to this. And I think that the board should take in comment, have discussion. My particular recommendation is that we do not change our ordinance. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Zorc.
About 8 months ago, when I had brought up a similar topic, not specifically for the addition of a beach facility construction, it was talked about at that time that at the December meeting of the TDC, they perhaps would discuss this of potentially adding any items or no items, keeping things status quo, and then bringing something back to us of whatever their preference or desires were. So I would rather, for myself, wait to let TDC have their December meeting. That's when it was talked about that this topic could come up, and see if they have any suggestions to us.
So I'm the chair of TDC.
Mhm.
So can you refresh my mind about what it is we're supposed to be talking about in December? Because I
Well-
thought that discussion had already occurred.
I'm guessing it was about 8 months ago. It was before the May meeting. You had mentioned that there was a group, or that this topic had been possibly informally talked about in the past. I don't remember the actual words.
So we did talk about that, and I believe that the minutes from that meeting are included in the backup to Commissioner O'Brien's item.
Okay.
We talked about the funding. I mean, unless there's something specific.
You had mentioned
Please just
something
let me
later.
know. I mean, be blunt
later in
about it.
I'd have to go back and watch our meeting from 8 months ago to see how the exchange went back and forth, but I had thought there would be something more formally brought back, keep things the way they are, or to change them. And this would have been something that was not going to be under the current discussion of your current allocation,
Right.
but it was something that would happen later.
We had that discussion, and that is attached
That's
to
the 516.
Commissioner O'Brien's item, the minutes from that meeting. So if there's something that you're looking for, I would need to
Okay.
know
I'll have to go
quickly,
back
because
and
we're
watch
putting
the-
together that agenda to go out.
I will go back and watch the tape and see if there's any
Okay.
particulars that were mentioned, and then we'll send them to,
Just let
I guess,
Misty know,
Jason or-
so, because she's putting together the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, all in all, given that we're here today and we've got this far, I think we'll continue. Anybody else from the board right now?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I have had the privilege and honor of serving as chairman of the TDC for about 5 years. And I'm pleased and honored that the TDC and the County Commission have supported the marketing endeavors for the specified areas to ensure we have growth in our recreation as well as our tourism, and they work hand in hand. I think that the numbers reflect the amount of growth that we've had. We've been quite successful where other jurisdictions have not. Those jurisdictions that do apply their funding in a different manner or way, including infrastructure. I don't believe that it is appropriate. I never have. I was open-minded, but by the same token, after reviewing just a couple of years back, looking at the artist rendition of what is being purported as a lifeguard station, which actually looks like more like a lounge comfort station. I mean, that is overwhelming. That's just one separate thought, that I believe that such a structure, even if it was considered to be funded, would possibly be a distraction to the intended goal of lifeguarding. And it's a building. It looks like a lounge. It doesn't look like an area directed towards the safety, security, and control of a beach area. And that's what the lifeguards are there for. They're not there for the type of environment that I believe that building would support. So to get into the discussion of should we change and get into a support of infrastructure would be the slippery slope to actually get to that point, which is that building. And I don't know if it would be downsized, but we're looking at over $200,000 plus. And I'm sure that that's before the change orders. And we look at what it costs the taxpayer for lifeguard stations throughout our guarded and protected, well-guarded and protected beaches. And I believe we run just, maybe it's like $2,000, $1,800. They're homemade, they're made by staff, and they're a very effective, efficient way of lifeguarding. So I see no, I'm not compelled to go in any other direction at this point. Thank you.
I think at this time we'll ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak. Please come on up. Welcome, Councilmember Moss. Your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Laura Moss, Vero Beach City Council, City Hall. I'm there pretty much every day. First, I'd like to congratulate the new chairman and vice chairman and say good morning to all the commissioners. I'm on my third chairman. I've actually been working on this since 2017 when Mr. Fleischer was the chairman. And while I appreciate your artistic and financial advice, I'm actually here respectfully to ask for respect, to ask for respect of Florida statute, to ask for respect of the city as a special taxing district, which we are, and to ask for respect of home rule for the city, that we are quite capable of determining how we should spend the money that we generate. And let's review for a moment how this all began. I'll read this into the record. This was the referendum that was passed March 10th, 1987. And what was the question they were voting on? I'm going to read it exactly. Shall there be a tourist development tax of 2% levied pursuant to section 125.0104 Florida statutes? The vote was 1,922 people, or 61.45% of people voted in favor of it. But you'll notice what they were voting for was the statute. Well, what you're currently doing does not honor that statute. In fact, you are standing between the city and that statute. So I am respectfully asking that you consider removing yourselves from that position and allow the city to exercise what is a right granted by the state in state statute. And that's my position on that. In addition to that, of course, it's within a context of our funding many different things, Dodgertown being one of them. That's, by the way, it's no longer 2% for the community. It's no longer 2%, it's now 4%. It increased quite a bit over time. And there are now 3 different funds. One of the funds supports historic Dodgertown, and I need to make that distinction because we've had a lot of press lately about the city-owned portion of Dodgertown, which is the golf course. We pay the city pays the debt on that to the tune of more than $600,000 a year. We also presumably contribute half of the payment of your debt, meaning the county's debt on historic Dodgertown, which is over $500,000 annually. Another fund within the tourist tax is beach restoration. We are Sector 5, the city, and have not received anything in quite a number of years. I've been told that it's cumulative, and and I understand that, and perhaps there'll be something forthcoming. But by the way, when this was originally passed, the majority of this money, if you look back at it, in the 1980s, the majority of the money went for beach restoration. There was $30,000 dedicated to Tourist Development Council, and that's it. The rest of it, hundreds of thousands of dollars, was for beach restoration. So that was the original intent, and today we're not seeing a lot of that, at least within the city itself. And finally, of course, there's tourist development. That's the third portion, which, again, we're happy to be collaborative on this. In fact, we've been collaborative probably almost to a fault. I'm very happy to be collaborative, but we're being charged, the entire portion have been historically District 1. And remember, this is a special taxing district, all right? So yes, I'm happy to collaborate, but please be aware of that distinction. We are, and this taxing District 1 is the city of Vero Beach only. That's it. Taxing District 2 is everything else. So when you look at the records, what you see is that District 1 is paying for, in fact, the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce. So Vero Beach, literally, the city of Vero Beach pays for the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce, which, by the way, the rate of which has increased more than 20% over a 2-year period of time and includes virtually no advertising. It's entirely taken up by salaries. We also pay Full Boat in the past. That may change. Full Boat, and I'm happy to collaborate, but there hasn't been any collaboration. We've been paying Full Boat for the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, and again, that's another branch. I'm glad we have a fiscal conservative in charge now, because maybe you'll review some of this. That's another agency whose budget has increased more than 20% in a 2-year period. So I'm asking, and I've looked at your records. The Tourist Development Council, and this is for the community, is not an elected body. There are 3 elected members, and the rest of them are appointed. And they're volunteers, and we're always thankful for volunteers, although I know some of the county commissioners are not that big on commissions, but we at the city are always thankful for volunteers, so I respect them. However, they're handling huge amounts of funds with, as far as I can tell, not a lot of supervision from the county commissioners. And I base that on the amount of time that you spend reviewing what they bring to you. I understand that you, or my understanding is that you give them formal approval, or give the budget formal approval based upon their recommendations. But in reviewing previous years, it looks like you've spent maybe, literally 3 minutes on it and then moved to the next item. That was when you had time. I have the copy here, so you can laugh, but I have the copy right here with me. So I'm happy to show you even now, should you wish. In fact, we can display it for the entire community if you would like. So I am respectfully requesting that you consider following Florida statute, allowing us to proceed. I'm basically asking that we be allowed to spend our own money. I'm not asking for your money. I'm asking for our money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm going to ask if there's anybody else from the public first. Anybody else from the public who wishes to speak on this item? There being none, Jason?
I just want to make sure for the public that the public's aware something has been said that we're not complying with Florida statutes. I want to clarify that. The first 2 cents of the tourist tax was approved by the voter referendum. However, the Board of County Commissioners has the ability to levy tourist taxes. Municipalities do not have that authority. If you look at the ordinance that Councilmember Moss was referring to, it's 125.0104. Looking at the title of Chapter 125 in Florida statutes, it's county government. That is the chapter that governs all of the powers that a county has. So this is a county revenue source. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that this is not something that is that we're taking, the allegation is we're taking the city's money. This is not city money. This money is collected by the clerk of the court, and it is remitted to the county per Florida statute. We do have a Tourist Development Commission, which doesn't make final decisions, but makes recommendations to the Board of County Commissioner. That is contemplated in statute. It has representation of the various municipalities, including a member of the City of Vero Beach City Council, as well as the City of Sebastian City Council, and various folks that are in the industry from different areas of the county, including Vero, Sebastian, Fellsmere unincorporated area. And I do want to correct the record on the city funding the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce. I think that's disingenuous. We have provided information that shows that the City of Sebastian, we got information from the Clerk of the Court's office, the City of Sebastian, the tax proceeds within the City of Sebastian, we have to get this breakdown from the Clerk of the Court, was somewhere between 8 and 9%, which is well in excess of the amount that the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce receives in funding. So no, the City of Vero does not fund the Sebastian River Area Chamber of Commerce budget. The tourist taxes generated in the City of Sebastian are more than sufficient to fund that budget. And I think this also points to maybe the statutes, and the intent of the statute is to make this, that this is a county revenue source, so you reduce the amount of parochial decisions where we're fighting over who gets what. I think the system works well. I think it's not best to go into the parochial nature. You could, 1.5 cents of the first 3 cents, 50% of the first 3 cents is used for beach renourishment. I think that's good and proper, and we've done great things with the beach renourishment. And the City of Sebastian, to their credit, has never come here and said, we don't have any oceanfront in the City of Sebastian. Why are you spending our tourist tax dollars on beach renourishment? That doesn't benefit us. So I don't think those types of parochial decisions benefit the community overall. I also want to correct that the Dodgertown debt service, first off, that debt service, the tourist tax is one of 3 sources that secures that. The original debt service was about $1.3 million there. There's $500,000 that the county receives from the state per state statute. We also pledged the county's half-cent sales tax, a major revenue source that helps fund our general fund and MSTU operations, along with the tourist tax. So the tourist tax only represents a portion of the debt service of historic Dodgertown, which I will point out falls wholly within the City of Vero city limits. And I think we just need to clear up, I wanted to clear up those items, and I just want to add that staff does not recommend that we fund this. I think it's a slippery slope. If you start funding beach improvements in the City of Vero, I think it would only be fair and appropriate to the other, to the county residents who last year the tourist taxes were generated 47.2% outside of the city. And last year, the year before that, it was a little over 50%, 51.8% were outside of the City of Vero. I think it would be only appropriate that the county beaches facilities should be eligible for those dollars, but I think that's a slippery slope. And I don't think we want to go there where the state was looking at making these funds available for sewer improvements and roadway improvements. I think that's the wrong direction. I think our tourist tax program that we have in place with the allocation for tourism development, Dodgertown and the beach renourishment has been working. We've seen good results with our tourism tax, so staff does not recommend making a change to the allocation of the tourist tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I know that you want to say something. Do you want me to make my comments first, or do you want the last word since you're?
Go ahead.
Okay, just actually from what both Councilmember Moss said and the county administrator, I mean, to me, you can take what they said and it really becomes a matter of basically political philosophy, and I think that that's what my comments are going to be based on. So the issue today seems to revolve around the question of whether the city of Vero Beach is receiving enough of the benefits of the tourist development tax. And I think that question is a very good one. The answer, I believe, depends upon your basic political philosophy. It's clear that the political philosophies of the city of Vero Beach and Indian River County are different. The primary focus of the city of Vero Beach seems to be on the city government, while that of Indian River County is to serve the citizens and customers of Indian River County. A clear example of this fundamental difference is shown in how the two entities handle their enterprise funds, such as their sewer and water utilities. The city of Vero Beach, time and time again, has made it clear that its enterprise funds are meant to generate a profit to be transferred into its general fund. This was made clear on its May 1st, 2018 City Council meeting when two citizens discussed various enterprise funds and the benefits of privatizing them. It was clearly stated that the Sewer and Water Enterprise Fund was important to the city because it made a profit. More recently, in a blog post this past Friday, former Vero Beach City Council member and Mayor Richard Winger was clear that the city philosophy was to make a profit, which could be transferred to the city's general fund. He wrote about what he argued was a proper use of the funds from the sale of Vero Electric. Former Mayor Winger was clear, quote, however, some proceeds from the sale of Vero Electric to FPL could and should be invested in the facility, referring to the city marina, so it can continue to make a profit for years to come. Yes, it does make a profit, but that profit could be greatly increased and contribute more cash flow to the city, making up for the annual revenue lost by selling Vero Electric. The city clearly believes that the city's enterprise funds should be used to funnel money to its general fund. The county has a very different philosophy. It believes that its enterprise funds are meant to serve the customers of its enterprise funds in the most effective and efficient way possible. It sets the fees and charges of its enterprise funds at the lowest possible level, consistent with the mission of service to its customers. The county transfers no enterprise funds revenue into its general fund. In the present case, we have a request to have the city of Vero Beach be a recipient of tourist development funds in a manner inconsistent with county policy. The request was dismissed by the Tourist Development Council. I'll note, however, that the council members' request is consistent with the city's philosophy of using monies, whatever monies are available, in order to keep its ad valorem taxes low. Conceptually, the present case is similar to the use of electric revenues that the city used to maintain low ad valorem taxes. The electric system has a large number of customers who live outside of the city of Vero Beach. They paid high Vero rates, millions of dollars of which were transferred to the city's general fund, keeping city's ad valorem taxes low. The tourist development tax revenues are driven by tourists who visit the city and county, but who do not live here. Now, the council member wants to use these taxes to help keep the city ad valorem taxes low. Just as I believe that the purpose of our enterprise funds is and ought to continue to be to serve our customers in an efficient and effective fashion, I believe that the purpose of tourist development taxes is and ought to continue to be to promote tourism for the benefit of the entire county and not to help keep the ad valorem taxes of any governmental unit low. So today, my vote will be consistent with the county's long-term philosophy of service to its residents. Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you.
Well done.
I respect Councilmember Moss's advocacy for her municipality, but quite frankly, I feel like enough is enough. I'm tired of the constant attacks and the continued desire to divide the community and allude that Vero Beach is not getting its fair share is ludicrous. As noted in, in past TDC revenue updates, District 1 does not bring in the majority of the dollars, and even when it did, it was not as disparate as it has been portrayed. The city of Vero Beach is neither the largest city by population or geographically, and to continue to say that they do not get their fair share is not only divisive, but downright unneighborly. TDC has had conversations on this issue, as indicated in the backup, and is not in favor. So as far as I'm concerned, no means no, and for me, the answer is no. I would suggest that the city of Vero Beach do what other governmental agencies do and plan for the improvements it needs, put it in a 5-year CIP, accrue the money, and then execute the project. But to try to distract from the city's lack of interest in doing what would be needed to plan and budget for this project by saying that TDC is hijacking dollars and to cast a shadow on the process that this committee goes through will not be tolerated by me. They do a great job and they work very hard to provide for all areas of the county and responsibly allocate limited funds. I'm very proud of the work they've done. I'm very proud of the work and the collaboration that we have community-wide. And I want to see that continue. So I'm not in favor of change, and I support all the actions of the current TDC and past TDCs in this regard. With that, I'll be happy to make a motion that we do not change the ordinance and we continue with our current model of collaboration.
We've got a motion.
Second with discussion.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Adams. I'll have to give the second to Commissioner O'Brien. And discussion, I'll begin with Commissioner Fleischer.
I just wanted to address one of the comments that we heard, and not in the form of an argument, in just form of maybe perhaps information. By state direction, we are required to have a tourist development council, and they are appointed individuals that were approved here at the county commission. Ironically, we also have another entity that we're required by the state to have, and that's the Planning and Zoning Commission. And again, none of those individuals are elected, they're appointed and codified here at the county commission. And I bring that up because during the discussion I heard that the unelected officials are making the decision, and then we're not spending time on it. Those individuals, we have the luxury, privilege, and honor of having people to volunteer to step up to the plate that care about the mission at hand and work diligently for countless hours. I will tell you, I was there for several years. And in addition, as an elected official, as the chair, that information is carefully reviewed, and a lot of countless weekends are spent on just looking at the applications and what the information is and where we can do best. And then we have rather vibrant discussion at the board. To say that we only spend several minutes of it here at the county commission is actually, I would say, a compliment, because we're saying that the TDC is doing their job that as a well-appointed, well-oiled machine that's taking all the information in and then having that discussion there, which, again, we do attend that meeting. We may sit in the back, but we watch that meeting and listen to the results. And we do our own homework. As you said, Councilwoman, that you spend a lot of time in the office. Well, we spend a lot of time everywhere, and the county is our office. So we may be doing this work and looking at this agenda and what the TDC is doing for many hours. The fact that we only have just a few minutes to approve something, again, I think that our TDC and you and the rest of the citizens should take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments from the board, I'll ask one more time if there's anybody else from the public.
I'm glad that you're proud. I'm glad that you philosophize. I'm glad that you work hard. But that doesn't change what the people voted for, which is the statute. They voted for the statute. We're not following the statute. It's just that simple. It's really very simple. I don't care to be called disingenuous. I would appreciate it if we can display this piece of paperwork, which was received from the county to the city, that shows what I was talking about. It's last year's, it's 2017. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. Make it, thank you, that looks good, yes. So you can see there, it says District 1, and the budget is, it's over $500,000, and then that's revenue that we're generating. And at that particular time, District 2, which is the entire rest of the county, was generating less than 4. I think that says 380. It's a little hard to read. Then if you look at the expenditures, and this is what I was talking about, District 1 is being assessed, or maybe I'm not using the proper term, and I'll leave that to you. If you want to call it something else, that's fine. I'm just looking at numbers here. So District 1 was charged for the Chamber of Commerce, which includes both the Indian River Chamber of Commerce and the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce. And that's what I was talking about. So, sir, I was not being disingenuous. Please don't resort to personal criticism. Let's just deal with the facts, and here they are. And we had our own Bureau Heritage at 13,000. Very happy to say. That's what I'm talking about. The community needs to be aware of this. And I'll ask you just one more time to please, and you don't have to do it today, keep this in mind going forward, to observe statute, because, you know, it diminishes people's confidence in government, their faith in government, when we're not observing statute. And I think we also want to stay away from personal criticisms. I've not criticized any of you, so I appreciate it if we can refrain from any personal criticisms. And I appreciate our collaboration. This is a request made respectfully. Thank you, and thank you for showing that those numbers. Thank you.
I'd like to
So,
point out on the, sorry.
So
I'd
the
like-
numbers that you're pointing out were the budgeted numbers. If you look at the actual numbers, District 2 brought in more money than District 1 on the information that you yourself have provided.
The far right column there.
That's the total actuals. What you have circled is the budgeted amount. Obviously, District 1 did not perform as highly as budgeted, yet District 2 performed much better. So this is what I'm talking about, though. 8 ways to Sunday, the answer has been given. And still, you hear what you want to hear and not the actual facts in front of you. So this is your information that you are showing. The information that you are showing clearly indicates that your argument has no weight or any merit. So I'm done with having this conversation. I think we've had it at TDC. We've had it at your council meetings. We've had it now at this commission meeting. And as far as I'm concerned, the issue's been put to bed.
Well, Jason, you had some comments?
Yeah, I was first going to just say what Commissioner Adams said is that for those at home, it may be hard to read. The far right column shows the total actuals of that year. Now, this is 9 months through the year. This is the report through through June 30th, it looks like. The District 1 Vero Beach revenues were $363,678. The District 2, which includes the unincorporated county and the other municipalities, $425,281. So the Vero District provided less than half, significantly less than half in this time period. And I just want to be clear, I'm not making any personal attacks. I just want it to be clear. I don't like when there's an allegation that this board is not following statute. I don't know what is meant by that, but we are complying with the Florida statutes. We're complying with not just the letter of the law, but the intent of the law. So I want to be very clear on that this board, the TDC, county staff, those agencies that we've received funding are complying with Florida statutes, And I just want that to be very clear, that we're not out of compliance with Florida statute.
These are your numbers,
Oh, but ma'am, hold
not
on,
my
please.
numbers.
I don't want this to devolve into a debate. That's not the purpose of this. So I'll ask for clarification from Attorney Reingold. I'll give you a last moment to speak, and then we'll get on with the vote.
Thank you very much. And to the point about the legality or illegality of whether the board is following the statutes, the statutory framework under 125.0104 says that the taxes can be used for the following purposes only. So it sets forth a number of uses that it can be used for. Clearly, the county's action or having an ordinance that allows for that money to be used for financing beach improvements, maintenance, renourishment, restoration, and erosion control is clearly within the scope of the Florida statutes. Now, it may not be as broad as the Florida statutes allow, but it's certainly not in conflict with the Florida statutes. For instance, the Florida statutes also contemplate that this board could appropriate tourist development taxes for auditoriums or for aquariums or for promoting zoological parks. And Indian River County hasn't adopted those things either. That doesn't mean that we're in violation of Florida statutes because we don't fund zoos or aquariums. It's just that the board has made the choice to have a more limited use of the funds consistent with Florida statutes. I hope that helps explain the issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reingold.
Well, may I ask a question then? If there were no county ordinance prohibiting it, the state statute allows beach park facilities. So the city then could use that money for beach park facilities based upon what the state allows.
Under the broader language of the state, but the county has decided that it's not going to fund aquariums, it's not going to fund zoos, and have a limited amount of use for the beach park money.
And that's not the same as saying that we're not following the state statute.
Well, if the ordinance didn't exist, we would have a beach park facility.
Well, if the road didn't exist, I wouldn't be speeding.
Well, the ordinance is in conflict with the statute, shall we say, or it's not in agreement.
It's not in conflict.
It's not in agreement with it.
No, it's none of those. It has flexibility, and we are managing our flexibility in what we believe are in the best interests of our community. And I'll just note, I mean, you mentioned the philosophy, and your last words the first time you were up were that you are asking for our money. And the way you put that, I took that to mean the city of Vero Beach was asking for its money. Well, I don't believe it is your money, and I'm a citizen of the city of Vero Beach. I don't pay much in the way of tourist development taxes. I never have any expectation that it's going to come to my city general fund. My understanding is those are for the benefit of promoting tourism, and I believe that that is the way those funds are being used. And I believe it's the proper way that they're being used. And I think that, again, as Commissioner Adams mentioned, if you open the door to individual governmental units getting the funds, then you're on the road to perdition, and I believe that's the wrong road to be on. So I didn't mean to be as vocal at the end as this, but I'm with Susan Adams on this. I'm about ready to call the question.
That's fine. I respectfully disagree. The funds are generated within the city. We are a special taxing district, and I am respectfully requesting that the funds generated in the city be allowed to be spent in the city. But I understand we respectfully disagree. Thank you.
With that, I believe we've covered the issue. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. We move on now to Commissioner Zork.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a follow-up from, I think, 2 meetings ago, where United Against Poverty was applying for a secondary grant through Chase, JP Morgan Chase, in looking to do a letter from the full commission versus individually. A draft letter was sent to the attorney's office, who provided some changes and modifications. I don't know exactly what all you changed. I think they were minor in nature. I believe the grant application is still in progress, so there's not a completed partial. That's a Commissioner, I think you wanted to see the application. I don't think one actually of the final version exists yet, at least that's my understanding, but possibly somebody from United Against Poverty could share on that. I do believe there was some change in, at least in a conversation, there was some changes in the committee that was discussed that that has changed. And why don't you go ahead and come up to the podium, because I don't know the exact language to put in on those. And name for the record, please.
Good morning.
Hold on, we'll open it up to the public when you're done, and we can...
Okay. So I'm asking for continuation from the original request for the commission to do a letter of support for United Against Poverty's application with for JP Morgan's Chase grant.
I have two questions,
Thank you.
or one question and one comment for you, Commissioner.
Yes.
The first one is, I understand it when we talked last time, this would not end up needing any additional county funds, and that's my only real issue right now. I just want to make sure of that.
Correct. That's
Okay,
my
so no
understanding
additional
as well.
county funds, fine. And the second thing is, could you find a better way than beginning it with "to whom it may concern"? If I'm going to sign it, I'd rather try to have a person or an office. I've never just liked signing it "to whom it may," because it's a personal quirk.
That's a great suggestion, and if we have one to substitute for that at the time of the drafting,
I'd rather use "dear friend" or whatever than...
Right.
Thanks. Now, if you'd like, I'll open it up to the public.
Okay.
Name and address for the record, please.
Trips Nelson. I'm a project director with United Against Poverty, 2746 US Highway 1. And I've had the pleasure of visiting with you several weeks ago and gave an overview to the Board of Commissioners of this opportunity. It is a private sector program that is intended to fund good things for communities that make a difference in the economies and help do things such as lift people out of poverty. And there was some discussion about the letter of support at the last meeting. It did get revised. There were some discussions and concerns about a proposed advisory board. That has been dropped from the letter of support. This is something that we would, of course, value and appreciate county input as far as the direction of our organization, but it clearly is on a voluntary basis.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the speaker? Any other comments from the board? I would be very happy to have a motion from Commissioner Zork, if you'd like to make one.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that Indian River County Board of County Commissioners issues a letter of support to Unite Against Poverty for their grant application to JP Morgan Chase.
I will second from Commissioner Flesher. The first was by Commissioner Zork, and before we take the motion, I'd like to thank you and Up With Poverty for all the work you do in our community. And with that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you. With that, we move on to the Solid Waste Disposal District, change order to Thaley for Milestone 1 of the Landfill Segment 3, Cell 2 Expansion Segment 2, Partial Closure, and Landfill Gas System Expansion Project. Mr. Burke.
Good morning. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director Utility Services. We have before you a no-cost change order extending the timeline of Milestone 1 and then requesting the additional 105 days to the contract. We do know that there were some issues with respect to the conditions at the site and some water that had made it difficult to stay on track. We are getting information through CDM Smith, our hired engineer, owner's representative, as well as from Thalley, that Milestone 2 and the final completion dates are to remain unchanged, but staff is recommending that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the chairman to execute the change order, again for no cost, just extending the time an additional 105 days for Milestone 1 to Talley Construction Company for Segment 3, Cell 2 Expansion, Segment 2 Partial Closure, Landfill Gas System Expansion Project. I'm available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Burke? We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher. I'll be happy to second it. All in favor?
Just under discussion. I'm going to vote to go with this, Vinnie, but I would like to point out Thalley's letter said there's a lot of conditions in the landfill that they were not aware of or weren't described to them, and that was part of their problem. I will point out that in the backup from C.D. Smith, our consultant, they reviewed that and they found that those assertions that the landfill is not described in the bid documents is not a valid basis for the recommendation for the extension. It seems to be based more primarily on the wet conditions out there. However, in Thalley's letter, they say, as we all know, we are in the rainy season. And I don't think a summer rainy season is a real surprise to anybody. It's been going on for the last million years. And I think contractors need to look at that when they're bidding on something and there's a start date that's May or some start date right prior, that they should expect a lot of rain, and then the bid documents, maybe the other bidders factored in rain days, and that made their bid more expensive. So they didn't get the project, but here we come back asking for 105 days. So I just think going forward, to me, rain days when we couldn't work aren't a valid excuse during the summer rainy season. I could see if a couple of years ago we had record rainfalls in January and February, and I can understand that not being something you would normally factor into your bid. But if you're looking at working May, June, July, and August, I would think somewhere in there's going to be some rain days that you need to factor in. So I'm going to support the motion, but just going forward, again, I don't like to see rain delays on a summer project. To me, it should have been clear, and they should have factored that in. So,
Well said, Commissioner. With that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. And with that, I'm happy to adjourn, but I would like to remind everybody that's still here that at 5 o'clock we're going to have a special call meeting on All Aboard Florida. We hope you all attend.
both of you.
Both of you.